Hello, welcome to my channel. If you're new, welcome back if you're a subscriber. Today, I'm going to be giving you all some recommendations for some books that are perfect to read for this time of year because of their snowy atmospheres, and I can't wait to share this list with you. I'm also going to be sharing what I want to read during this season myself because I have quite a few of holiday reads that I found that are thrillers and horror books that I'm very intrigued by, as well as just some other snowy, isolated, atmospheric novels that'll be perfect for this time of year. I'm such a seasonal reader. I always want to read books with atmospheres that reflect the season, and this is just the perfect time of year to read all of these kinds of brutal one by one, people are caught in a storm, all of those kind of tropes I just live for during this time of year. And specifically, I love people being picked off one by one in isolated, snowy atmospheres. I just love the whole blizzard aesthetic, I guess I should say. It's so much fun. I also want to say I made another video last year, and I highly recommend checking out that one because that has some of my all-time favorites in it as well. So I would recommend checking that one out. And there's also some TBR books that I was interested in last year that I didn't get to read during that season. And like I said, I like to read things seasonally, so I wasn't going to pick up winter books during the springtime. So I'll make sure to link that video in the description so you all can check it out. Anyway, let's get into the video. And I want to talk about the first book I actually read this year, which is An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. So when I started this one, I was so excited and I predicted that this would be a 5-star read, and honestly, it didn't end up being a 5-star, but I think this one is perfect if you're looking for something where people are being picked off one by one. It has that Agatha Christie trope, and it has a perfect atmosphere. This one has amazing descriptions of the setting. So it's about a group of people who are going on vacation in this old hotel, and there are wood-burning fireplaces. And it's this mountain lodge, and it just felt so cozy, but also eerie at the same time, which is my favorite combination. Basically, a group of people go there though for their vacation, and they get snowed in, and people start dying, and they have to figure out who actually is committing these murders and try to fight for their lives. I also really enjoyed the last twist in this one. It wasn't a perfect thriller in my opinion. It didn't get a 5-star, but I would highly recommend it for this time of year, and it's a really fast read. The next book is This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Marceau, and this one is a novella, but let me tell you, it packs a punch. This horror novella follows a woman who has had a very toxic relationship with her mother and her family, and her relationship is estranged, but her father recently had passed away, but she agrees to go on a vacation with her mom to a remote cabin. But once they arrive, things are not really feeling quite right. Something seems very off with her mother and the setting of the house, and they end up getting snowed in, which is again, one of my favorite tropes for this time of year. I love reading about that. So they get snowed in, they're trapped, they're isolated, and scary things start to happen. The ending of this one also was so intense, oh my gosh, and I just love the claustrophobic atmosphere. And this one definitely had Misery vibes if you read Misery by Stephen King. The next book I want to talk about is perfect to read this Christmas. I would recommend honestly reading this on Christmas Eve if you're able to, and it is The Visitor by Sergio Gomez, and this is another little novella, and it actually is about aliens, and it is the first ever story I've read about aliens. I guess, wait, I have read The Fifth Wave, but besides that, it is the first one that I've read in a very, very long time. And this one is perfect for the holidays. And this one actually takes place on Christmas during a horrible storm that makes a bunch of people traveling pull over at this little roadside diner. And they have to take shelter together, they start getting to know each other, but soon they won't only just be fighting the storm, but fighting for their lives as well. I actually wanted this one to be way longer, which usually doesn't happen with novellas. I was really enjoying the story. It's very action-packed. It's perfect for this time of year, and I recommend reading it, like I said, as close as you can to Christmas to really feel all of those vibes. The next book I want to recommend is one I personally really didn't like, so that probably sounds funny to you all, but I want to recommend it because so many people did love it, and I think it's a really good option for this time of year to read if you want a over-the-top, bonkers, ridiculous thriller filled with drama and all of that stuff. The reason why I didn't like it was I generally like those things in thrillers, but I still want there to be like an eerie, scary atmosphere, and this one just didn't have it for me. It kind of lost that. But if you haven't guessed already, I'm talking about The Writing Retreat by Bartz. Like I said, it's over the top and dramatic. I wanted more of a tense, claustrophobic, chiller of a read. But this one is about a group of 5 writers, and they are all selected to go to this really famous, influential author's estate that's remote, it's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's a mansion. And the goal is for them all to write a whole novel from start to end and basically compete for who has the best novel. And then whoever wins gets a really, really good publishing deal. So it's very cutthroat. There are some characters who have pasts together and tensions arise. So I would recommend still trying out this novel. The last one on this list is a book that actually doesn't technically have, you know, the snowy, isolated winter setting as the plot point, but it is winter during it. I really wanted an excuse to talk about this one because it's such a good book. I feel like it's very underrated. And also there are multiple scenes that involve snow, and you definitely know that it takes place during winter. So it's perfect in that way. And it is Girl 11 by Amy Clark. And this one is one of my new favorite thrillers. And it totally took me by surprise, like I said, because I hadn't heard many people talking about it before. But it's amazing if you want to feel like you're listening to a true crime podcast. The audiobook is very, very well produced. I know some people don't always love hearing recommendations just based off of audiobooks, and I do want to say it's not just based on the audiobook. The actual story is very, very good as well, but I do think the audiobook enhances the reading experience. So the main character in this one was a social worker, but now for a couple years, she has been running this popular true crime podcast where she covers cases of missing and abducted children, and she's actually successfully helped solve cases by doing this. But now she's decided to focus on a killer called the Countdown Killer. And this is a serial killer who actually terrorized the town 20 years in the past. And he kidnapped girls ritualistically. It was very based on numbers, and he would always follow a specific pattern. But one day the murders actually stopped, and law enforcement just assumed that he was no longer around, that he had died. And so they've kind of just put the case to rest. But now in the present day, abductions are happening again, and they are following the MO of this serial killer. So obviously she has to try to solve the case. It's very high stakes. I loved it so much. It was very fast paced. And like I said, the audiobook is incredible. So I would highly recommend checking this one out. And I think it's perfect for this season. All right, now I want to switch over to my TBR, so books that I would really love to read this winter season. And the first one is The Resort by Sarah Goodwin. And this one sounds so intense. I'm very excited that I stumbled upon this book when I was looking up snowy books that have come out recently. And this one is about a woman named Mila, and she is on her way to her sister's wedding, which is up in the mountains. It's a very remote location. And her husband are driving along in the car. It starts to seem a little eerie, a little too isolated, and then their car actually breaks down. So what they end up doing is they get out of the car, they go down the road and try to find this abandoned ski resort that they saw on their way in, and decide to break into one of the old cabins so they can spend the night because it's so cold. But once morning comes, she wakes up and her husband is missing. So this one sounds like such a good setup. I really want to get my hands on this one. The next book is Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates, and this one seems more like a thriller. Darcy Coates writes horror and thriller books, and this one seems to fall more into the thriller category and sort of follow the "and then there were none" concept. So in this one, there's a group of people who are stuck in a remote cabin because of the weather. Again, this is a trope that just has repeated itself throughout this whole video, but it's such a good one. And they get stuck because they're up in the Rocky Mountains, but there's a snowstorm. And so they all have to take shelter, and then in the morning, they find the tour guide's severed head in a tree. And so they all have to fight for their lives. Darcy Coates is amazing at atmosphere, so I suspect that this one is going to be so atmospheric. And then I really want to read Breathless, and I got this from Book of the Month a while ago. And this is about a journalist, and she goes to one of the highest peaks in the world, and she goes to interview a famous mountaineer as she goes through this journey in hopes of it becoming a career-making opportunity. The climber ends up dying though, and what everybody suspects is a freak accident turns out to be not the case, and that someone is actually out there hunting them all down. So she's stranded and fighting for survival, not only with the elements, but also with somebody who's trying to kill everyone. This one sounds really intense. I've heard mixed reviews about it, but I still want to check it out myself because obviously it has the atmosphere that I love, so I want to give it a shot. The last category in this video is my TBR for Christmassy books, which I have found so many this year. I feel like Barnes & Noble has had a really good setup this year of showcasing Christmas themed thrillers. So I have seen quite a few that I'm interested in. And then when I was looking on Goodreads, I kind of looked at suggested ones or ones that I had thought I had heard of in the past. And I have quite a long list of this. I'm very excited about how many holiday themed books there are because I am obviously, like I've said a million times before, I'm such a seasonal reader. I love reading about the time of year it is. So the first book is Christmas Presents by Lisa Unger, and this is actually my Patreon buddy read pick for this month. So I'm buddy reading it with my patrons, and this one is about a woman named Madeline, and she is an owner of a bookshop. And she's actually extremely successful despite her tragic past. She was the only surviving victim of a serial killer who killed her best friend. And his name is Evan Handy. One day, a true crime podcaster actually walks into her bookshop and starts asking her questions about her past. And this man, Evan Handy, has been in jail, but 3 other women have gone missing since he's been in jail. And it also says, as Christmas approaches and a blizzard bears down, Madeline and her childhood friend, Badger, return to a past they both hoped was dead to find the missing Lolly and to answer questions that have haunted them both, discovering that the truth is more terrible and much closer to home than they think. So the most recent person who has disappeared is a woman named Lolly. So this one sounds very interesting. Again, I love books with the true crime podcast element. I think it's really fun. So I'm looking forward to reading this one. The next book I've had my eyes on every time I go inside Barnes & Noble is The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. This one sounds so atmospheric. So this one's about an American art student who is invited by her friend to spend Christmas with her and her family in this little English village, and she is so excited about this. It seems so picturesque, so cozy, so cute. And she's just in awe of the experience when she arrives. She's also very infatuated with her friend's brother. But soon she finds out that the brother is actually being investigated over a brutal murder that has occurred in the town. It says over 30 years later, the events of the horrific week are revisited along with a diary from that time. What began in a small English village in 1989 reaches its ghostly conclusion in modern day New York many Christmas seasons later. So it sounds like there's gonna be diary entries from the past from when the student actually visited in the village. And it sounds really good. I am very excited to get my hands on this one. And it looks like it's quite short. Another quick short read is The Christmas Appeal by Janet Hallett, and this one, the formatting looks very fun. This is about a community theater group who are putting together a production for the Christmas season, but a dead body turns up on stage, and in this one you're following 2 lawyers who are reading through text messages, emails, police transcripts, documents, and all of that kind of mixed media to figure out what actually happened. So this sounds very engaging, reading a book in this fun formatting. The 12 Days of Murder by Andreina Cordani is about 8 friends. So this one says 8 friends created the exclusive masquerade murder society while in college. The murders they solved were fictional until their final masquerade when one of the group disappeared. 12 years later, the remaining members are invited to a reunion in the Scottish Highlands. So that one sounds very intriguing. The next one is called Christmas in the Empty Cabin by E. Reyes. I've actually read from this author before. I read a collection called The Halloween Grindhouse, and it was a bunch of different stories that center around Halloween, and I really enjoyed it. There were some awesome stories in that. So it's really cool that this one is about the Christmas holiday, and also I think there's some about Thanksgiving and some other winter holidays in there. I believe there's 6 stories and 3 of them are about Christmas, and it's also on KU, which is really great. The next book I've had my eyes on for a while, and it's called Dying for Christmas, and this is by Tammy Cohen. This one says, I am missing, held captive by a blue-eyed stranger. To mark the 12 days of Christmas, he gives me a gift every day, each more horrible than the last. The 12th day is getting closer. After that, there'll be no Christmas cheer for me. No mince pies, no carols, no way out. But I have a secret. No one has guessed it. Will you? A Cold Place for Dying by Kristopher Triana really caught my eye because I recently read Gone to See the Riverman by the same author, and it's an extremely intense horror novel, so read trigger warnings, but it has become one of my favorite horror books. It is a lot, but it is so, so well done. This one's concept sounds very intense, and it's about a man who has recently lost his wife, and it's Christmas Eve. He decides he wants to spend time in nature to find some peace, and he decides to go deer hunting. He wants to be unplugged though, so he leaves his phone in the truck, but once he sets out, he finds this woman. She's frantically running towards him, asking for his help. She says she's being chased, she was kidnapped by an evil man, but he ends up running into that man, and the man says that they're actually married and that's his wife, and she is delusional. So he doesn't know who to trust. This sounds very, very interesting. It sounds like they get caught in a snowstorm, and I'm assuming it's very intense. I can't wait to check this one out. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found some good recommendations and good ideas to add to your TBR for this season. Let me know if you've read any of these books in the comments, and if you've made it this far, leave a little snowflake emoji, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.